First contact. Lieutenant Melody Zhang stood at the observation deck of the Far Reach, watching as the massive gate loomed before them. Unlike the other gates they'd encountered throughout their mission, this one hung silent and dark against the backdrop of space, its surface unmarred by the usual patchwork of lights and markers left behind by previous explorers. "Lieutenant, your team is cleared for departure," Captain Quarry's voice came through the ship's comm system. "Remember, this is strictly reconnaissance. We don't know why the Caxi never fully documented this gate." Melody adjusted her pressure suit's helmet, double-checking the seals. After 3 years of exploring gates across known space, she'd developed a healthy respect for Murphy's Law. Anything that could go wrong, would go wrong, especially when dealing with ancient alien technology. The shuttle bay was already prepped when she arrived. Commander Jean Perrinum and Dr. Fessy, their Caxi xenoarchaeologist, were running final checks on their equipment. The sight of Fessy's tall, willowy frame always made Melody smile. Even after decades of human-Caxi cooperation, there was something endearingly awkward about how the aliens moved in human-designed spaces. "Ready for another wild goose chase?" Jean asked, his dark eyes twinkling with excitement. Despite his commander's rank, he'd always treated their missions more like adventures than military operations. "Let's hope this one actually leads somewhere," Melody replied, climbing into the shuttle. 53 gates explored, and we're still no closer to understanding who built them or why they abandoned them. Fessy's head frills rippled in what Melody had learned was their equivalent of a thoughtful frown. "Perhaps that is the wrong question, Lieutenant. We should ask not why they abandoned the gates, but why they built them in the first place." The shuttle detached from Far Reach with barely a shudder. Lieutenant Frankfurt, their pilot, had a gentle touch with the controls that Melody always appreciated. As they approached the gate, its true scale became apparent, a perfect circle nearly 2 kilometers in diameter, constructed from a material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No signs of damage or deterioration, Fessy noted, his instruments scanning the structure. Like all the others, it appears to have been built to last eternity. Their landing zone was a small platform extending from the gate's outer ring, standard configuration for all gates they'd encountered so far. What wasn't standard was the complete lack of previous landing marks or equipment traces. Either the Caxi had never landed here, or all evidence of their presence had been meticulously removed. The team bounced across the platform's surface in the minimal gravity, their magnetic boots providing just enough traction to prevent them from floating away. Melody led the way to the entrance, a simple doorway that looked almost disappointingly ordinary given its alien origins. "Well, we know one thing about the gate builders," Jean said as they approached. "What's that?" Melody asked. "They were about our size. That door is pretty normal looking for both humans and Caxi." As they neared the entrance, Melody noticed something else unusual: no markings, no handles, no obvious mechanism for opening it. Before she could voice her concern, the door simply opened, sliding silently into the floor. "That's new," Frankfurt muttered over the comm. The chamber beyond was vast and dark, their helmet lights barely penetrating the shadows. Unlike other gates, there were no control panels, no obvious technological systems, just smooth, featureless walls that seemed to drink in their light. "This feels more like a tomb than a transportation hub," Jean observed, his voice hushed despite the radio link. Fessy's instruments chirped softly. "The architecture is consistent with other gates, but the interior configuration is unique. The directory stone should be through the next chamber, but... Melody prompted. "But nothing about this gate follows the expected patterns. We should proceed with extreme caution." They moved deeper into the structure, their footsteps echoing strangely in the vast space. The second door they encountered remained stubbornly closed despite their approach. After several minutes of examination, Melody did something that would change everything: she reached out and touched it. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. The outer door slammed shut with a resonating boom, and brilliant white light flooded the chamber. Emergency channels erupted with concerned voices from far reach, but Melody barely heard them. Her attention was fixed on a small device that had emerged from the top of the inner door, something that looked disturbingly like a scanning system. The device examined each of them in turn before retreating into its housing. The inner door sank into the floor, revealing a chamber that drew gasps from everyone present. The room was enormous, its ceiling vaulting at least 10 meters overhead. In the center, mounted on a simple pedestal, stood a directory stone unlike any they'd encountered before. Most stones contained 2 or 3 sets of coordinates. This one was covered in dozens of address sequences, its surface practically crawling with alien script. "This is impossible," Fessy whispered, his voice trembling with excitement. "We've never found anything like this." "This could be a master list," Jean suggested. "Some kind of central hub." Melody approached the stone, drawn by its impossible presence. The surface seemed to ripple slightly, as though the symbols were floating just beneath a liquid surface. Without thinking, she reached out to touch it. "Lieutenant, wait." Fessy called out, but it was too late. The moment her gloved hand made contact with the stone's surface, Melody felt something, someone else's presence in her mind. There was a sensation like an indrawn breath, a moment of profound surprise, and then the screaming began. When Melody regained consciousness in Far Reach's medical bay, she knew 3 things with absolute certainty: the gate builders weren't gone, they had been waiting, and humanity had just announced its presence to something far older and more powerful than anyone had imagined. As Dr. Iram ran his tests and Captain Quarry asked her questions, Melody kept the 4th thing she knew to herself: the presence she'd felt hadn't just been surprised to find her. It had been delighted. Echoes of the past. Dreams plagued Melody's recovery. In them, she walked through endless corridors of light, each step echoing with whispers in languages no human throat could produce. The presence she'd encountered in the gate remained with her, not as an intrusion but as a lingering resonance, like a melody heard so clearly it becomes impossible to forget. 3 days after the incident, Captain Quarry called an emergency meeting in Far Reach's secure conference room. Melody sat between Dr. Iram and Commander Parinam, aware of the concerned glances they kept casting in her direction. Dr. Fessy sat across from her, his head frills constantly shifting in patterns that suggested intense agitation. "The data we recovered from the directory stone is problematic," Fessy began, projecting a holographic representation of the alien coordinates above the table. "We've identified 53 distinct gate addresses, but they don't conform to any known mapping system. They're written in a variant of gate builder script we've never encountered before." "Could it be encrypted?" Jean asked, leaning forward to study the rotating symbols. "No," Melody said, the word escaping her before she realized she was speaking. "They're not encrypted. They're alive." Silence fell over the room. Captain Quarry's expression remained neutral, but her fingers drummed once on the table, her tell when she was deeply troubled. "Explain," she said simply. Melody took a deep breath. "When I touched the stone, I didn't just receive information. I experienced memory. The gate builders didn't write these coordinates, they grew them. The stones aren't just recording devices, they're more like seeds." "Seeds?" Dr. Iram's medical interest was clearly piqued. "You mean they're biological?" "Not exactly." Melody struggled to translate concepts that had been impressed directly into her consciousness into words others could understand. "The gates, the stones, they're part of something larger. Something that thinks. The coordinates aren't just locations, they're more like synapses in a neural network that spans the galaxy." Fessy's head frills stood straight up, a sign of extreme surprise or revelation among the Caxi. That would explain so much. The uniformity of gate design across vast distances. The self-repair capabilities we've observed. The way they seem to respond to conscious intent rather than mechanical interaction. And now one of these nodes has made direct contact with a human mind, Captain Quarry said grimly. Lieutenant, are you absolutely certain you're yourself? The question hurt, but Melody understood its necessity. I'm me, Captain. But I'm me with additional context. The presence I encountered, it wasn't trying to change me or control me. It was trying to understand us. All of us. Humans, Caxi, it was like it had been waiting for someone to finally reach out and touch back. That's all very fascinating, Far Reach's Chief of Security, Commander Hassan, interjected, but it doesn't address the immediate security concerns. If these gates are part of some kind of galactic consciousness, we need to assume everything we do near them is being observed and recorded. No, Melody said firmly. You don't understand. They're not monitoring us. They're inviting us. The gates, the stones, they're not a surveillance network. They're a library. A university. A graduation test. She stood up and walked to the hologram, her fingers passing through the floating symbols. These coordinates, they're not random. They're arranged in a specific sequence. A curriculum, if you will. The gate builders left this system in place for species that reached a certain level of technological and social development. Species that learned to cooperate enough to find and activate the gates in the first place. Like humans and Caxi working together, Jean mused. Exactly. Every gate we found so far has been like a primary school textbook. Basic information, simple concepts. But this gate, the one we just found? It's more like a university library. And the presence I encountered, think of it like an eager professor who's finally found some promising students. Captain Quarry leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. You realize how this sounds, Lieutenant? You're suggesting that an ancient alien species left behind an automated teaching system spanning thousands of light years, just waiting for other species to evolve enough to use it? Not just use it, Melody corrected. Learn from it. Grow beyond it. The gate builders, they're not dead or gone. They've evolved beyond the need for physical form. What we've been studying isn't their remains, it's their legacy. Their gift to whoever came after them. And now they want to teach us, Fessy said, his voice filled with wonder. But what do they want to teach us? Commander Hassan asked. And more importantly, why? Before Melody could answer, Far Reach's emergency alert system activated. Red warning lights bathed the conference room as the ship's AI announced, unknown energy signature detected. Multiple gate activations in progress. They rushed to the bridge, where the main viewport showed an impossible sight. The gate they'd been studying was alive with energy, its formerly dark surface now rippling with patterns of light that seemed to flow like liquid mercury. But that wasn't what had drawn gasps from the bridge crew. Beyond their gate, visible as points of light in the darkness of space, other gates were activating. Gates they hadn't even known existed, hidden in the void between stars, each coming to life in sequence like a cascade of dominoes spreading out across the galaxy. They're not just teaching us, Melody whispered, understanding flooding through her. They're showing us the way home. They're home. As if in response to her words, the nearest gate's energy patterns shifted, forming distinct symbols that hung in space like constellation maps. The same symbols that had been encoded in the directory stone, now written in light against the darkness of space. Captain Quarry turned to Melody, her expression a mixture of concern and curiosity. Lieutenant, I hope you paid attention during your lesson. Because I have a feeling we're about to need a translator. Melody nodded, her eyes fixed on the glowing symbols. The presence in her mind stirred, not with words exactly, but with concepts, images, understanding. The gates weren't just transportation devices or teaching tools, they were invitations. And humanity had just accepted one. Captain, she said, her voice steady despite the enormity of what she was about to suggest, I think it's time we took the next step in our education. As if in agreement, the symbols on the gate shifted again, forming a clear sequence, the first lesson in humanity's advanced curriculum among the stars. Becoming storm. The changes spread through Far Reach's crew like ripples in a pond. Within a week, 32 crew members showed signs of enhancement, improved cognitive abilities, spontaneous understanding of complex systems, and most troublingly, shared dreams of something vast and dark moving between the stars. Captain Quarry had ordered the ship to maintain position near the gate while they attempted to understand what was happening. The Caxi High Council, after learning of Dr. Fessie's transformation, had sent their fastest ship carrying their most experienced xenobiologists. The Starweaver arrived with a team led by senior researcher NX Thao, whose scales bore the distinctive patterns of someone who had accessed the forbidden archives. "We should have known this day would come," NX Thao said during their first meeting. His translator was off, he was speaking perfect English, another sign of the changes. "Our ancestors glimpsed only the surface of what the gate builders were offering, and it terrified them. But they knew humanity would find this place eventually. That's why they chose to ally with your species." "You're saying the Caxi-Human alliance wasn't just about mutual benefits?" Commander Hassan asked, his enhanced mind already connecting the dots. "It was preparation." "Insurance," Melody corrected, understanding flowing through her enhanced consciousness. They knew humans would react differently to the gate builder's gift. Where the Caxi saw something to fear, we'd see something to explore. NX Thao's scales rippled in agreement. "But now we face the same choice together. The warning encoded in the gate's transmission is clear, the darkness between worlds is stirring. The gate builders evolved beyond physical form to escape it. They left us their knowledge so we could do the same." Dr. Iram, who had been studying both human and Caxi transformations, pulled up a holographic display of their changed neural patterns. "The alterations to our biology are accelerating. Those affected are developing new neural pathways, enhanced sensory processing, and most significantly, a form of quantum entanglement at the cellular level. We're becoming like them," Fessie said softly. "Not just understanding their technology, but becoming compatible with it. The gates aren't just transportation devices, they're transformation chambers." Captain Quarry, who remained unaffected by the changes, stood at the viewport watching the gate's shifting patterns. "And what happens to those who choose not to transform? Are they left behind? Abandoned to face this darkness alone?" The question hung heavy in the air. Melody approached the captain, trying to find words to explain what she understood on a level beyond language. "Captain, I've seen what's coming. We all have, in our dreams. It's not just a physical threat, it's something that consumes consciousness itself. The gate builders didn't abandon anyone. They created this network, this path to evolution, to save everyone who could follow it. But not everyone can," Hassan pointed out. "Only about 40% of the crew has shown signs of enhancement. What about the rest?" Before anyone could respond, Far Reach's sensors detected something new, a massive gravitational disturbance at the edge of their scanner range. The main screen showed a region of space where stars seemed to be disappearing. "It's here," Melody whispered, the knowledge flooding through her enhanced mind. "The darkness the gate builders fled from. It's found us." NX Thao's scales turned a deep, warning black. "We don't have much time. The gate network, it's not just for travel or transformation. It's a weapon. The only weapon that ever worked against the darkness. But it requires evolved consciousness to activate." "The coordinates," Fessie realized, his head frills dancing with excitement. "They're not just locations. They're firing solutions. Each gate is a node in a vast defense network, designed to channel evolved consciousness into a force that can push back the darkness." Captain Quarry turned from the viewport, her expression resolute. "How long do we have? At its current speed?" Dr. Iram checked the sensors. "The anomaly will reach the nearest inhabited system in 3 months. Then we have 3 months to make a choice," Quarry said. "To either embrace this evolution and face the darkness as something new, or stand our ground as we are and face extinction. She looked at each person in the room. And we have to choose together, humans and Caxi, or we don't stand a chance either way. Melody felt the pull of the gate growing stronger. The knowledge within her was unfolding, revealing not just the nature of the threat they faced, but the full scope of what the gate builders had achieved. They hadn't just transcended physical form, they had discovered a way to encode consciousness itself into the fabric of spacetime. "Captain," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the air itself vibrate, "I need to go back to the gate. There's something there, something we missed. The directory stone isn't just a list of coordinates. It's a key. The first key. And there are others out there, waiting to be found." As if in response to her words, new patterns appeared on the gate's surface, patterns that spoke of other keys, other transformations, and a path through the darkness that could save not just humanity in the Caxi, but all conscious life in the galaxy. But first, they had to choose to take the next step. And that step would change everything. The captain's choice. Captain Elena Quarry stood in her private quarters, staring at her reflection in the small mirror above her desk. After 23 years in the Space Exploration Corps, she'd earned every silver strand in her dark hair, every line etched around her eyes. But now, watching her unchanged features while half her crew evolved into something beyond human, she wondered if her resistance to transformation was wisdom or fear. "Captain," Far Reach's AI announced, "Lieutenant Zhang and the Caxi delegation request your presence in the Gate Research Lab." Elena straightened her uniform. "Tell them I'm on my way." The corridors of Far Reach felt different now. Those crew members affected by the gate's influence moved with an otherworldly grace, their movements synchronized in subtle ways that made Elena's skin crawl. Even the ship's systems seemed to respond differently to them, as if the very technology they used was adapting to their enhanced consciousness. The Gate Research Lab had been transformed. What was once a standard analysis room now hummed with energy as enhanced crew members worked with technology in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Holographic displays showed mathematical formulae that seemed to twist in impossible ways, describing concepts that human language lacked words to express. Melody Zhang stood at the center of it all, her eyes gleaming with an inner light that made Elena's heart ache for the earnest young officer she'd once been. Beside her, Dr. Fessy and senior researcher NX Thal worked with the directory stone data, their movements perfectly coordinated. "Captain," Melody said, turning to face her. "We've decoded more of the gate builder's warning. The darkness, it's not just coming. It's already here." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "Explain." NX Thal gestured at one of the twisted holographic displays. "The disappearing stars we detected? They're not being destroyed. They're being disconnected. The darkness isn't just consuming matter, it's severing the quantum connections that bind consciousness to reality. Think of the universe as a vast neural network," Fessy added, his scales shifting through complex patterns. "Each star, each planet, each living mind contributes to the greater consciousness of existence. The darkness is like a cancer, isolating and destroying these connections one by one. The gate builders discovered this too late to save everyone," Melody continued. "But they found a way to preserve consciousness by transferring it into the quantum fabric of space itself. The gates aren't just transportation devices, they're transcendence points." Elena moved closer to the displays, trying to make sense of the impossible mathematics. "And the keys you mentioned? The ones we need to find?" "We've located the next one," Melody said, her voice carrying those strange harmonics that made the air itself resonate. A new hologram appeared, showing a gate hidden in the shadow of a dying star. "But reaching it will require something we haven't done before. We need to activate this gate fully, not just for transportation, but for transformation." "The risk," Elena began. "Is necessary," NX Thal interrupted. "Captain Quarry, we've detected 12 more stellar disconnections in the past hour. The darkness is accelerating its advance. We estimate less than 2 months before it reaches populated space, not 3. Commander Hassan, who had recently begun showing signs of enhancement, stepped forward from a console he'd been monitoring. "Captain, we've also detected something else. The unaffected crew members, they're starting to show symptoms of quantum degradation. Minor now, but increasing." Elena's blood ran cold. "What kind of symptoms?" Dr. Iram emerged from his research station, looking grave. "Memory lapses. Decreased cognitive function. Microsecond delays in neural responses. It's as if their consciousness is beginning to lose its connection to physical reality. The darkness doesn't need to reach us physically to affect us," Melody explained softly. "It works by severing quantum connections across space-time. The only protection is to evolve beyond the need for those particular connections, to transition our consciousness into the quantum framework the gate builders created." Elena walked to the viewport, watching the gate's surface shimmer with patterns that now seemed less alien and more like a lifeline. "How many of the crew are still unaffected by the transformation?" 28%, Hassan reported. "Including you, Captain." She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of command settle on her shoulders like a physical burden. Everything in her training, everything in her experience told her to be cautious, to protect her crew from unknown risks. But now, inaction might be the greatest risk of all. If we do this, if we activate the gate for full transformation, what happens to those who can't or won't transform? Melody approached her, and Elena saw not just the enhanced being she'd become, but also the dedicated officer who still remained. "Captain." "Elena, the gate builders left us their knowledge because they faced this same choice. They discovered that consciousness itself is more flexible, more universal than anyone imagined. The transformation doesn't override who we are, it expands it. And once enough consciousness has evolved, it can help guide others through the transition." "You're saying we could help the others transform?" "We could help everyone transform," Fessy said. "Not just our crew, but all of humanity, all Caxi, all conscious beings. The gate builders created this network not just to save themselves, but to save everyone who came after them." Elena turned back to the viewport, watching as new patterns of light cascaded across the gate's surface. In her 23 years of service, she'd made countless difficult decisions. But none like this. "How long?" she asked finally. "To activate the gate for transformation?" "Hours," Melody replied. "To reach the next key before the darkness consumes that sector?" "Days at most." Elena Quarry, captain of the Far Reach, descendant of a long line of explorers and pioneers, took one last look at her reflection in the viewport. The woman who looked back at her was about to make a decision that would change the course of human and Caxi history forever. "Send word to both Earth Command and the Caxi High Council," she ordered. Tell them we found a door. And it's time to step through." The patterns on the gate's surface shifted again, as if in response to her decision. And in the depths of space, the darkness continued its advance, consuming stars and severing connections, racing against the evolution of consciousness itself. Transcendence. The transformation began at 0300 ship's time. Melody stood before the directory stone, no longer wearing her pressure suit. The gate's chamber had been pressurized, filled with a luminescent atmosphere that seemed to pulse with its own consciousness. Around her, the enhanced crew members formed a circle, their minds already partially merged with the gate's quantum framework. Captain Elena Quarry watched from behind a containment field, along with the remaining unenhanced crew. The quantum degradation had accelerated in the past 12 hours, 2 crew members had already slipped into comas as their neural patterns began to disconnect from reality. "The gate is ready," Melody announced, her voice carrying harmonics that made the very atoms of the air resonate. "The transformation sequence has been encoded. Once we begin, there's no stopping until it's complete." Elena stepped forward, her hand resting on the containment field. "Lieutenant Melody. Are you certain about this?" Melody turned to face her captain one last time as a purely human being. "The gate builders left us more than just knowledge, Captain. They left us hope. A way to survive what's coming by becoming something greater than we are. Not by losing ourselves, but by expanding what self means. The directory stone began to pulse with an inner light, its symbols flowing like liquid across its surface. Dr. Fessy and NX Thal approached it from opposite sides, their transformed bodies now sharing more similarities than differences. The darkness has reached the Orion Spur, Far Reach's AI announced. Stellar disconnection rates are accelerating. Estimated time to populated space, 38 days. Begin the sequence, Elena commanded, straightening her uniform one last time. Whatever we become, let it be enough to save what we leave behind. Melody placed her hand on the directory stone. This time, there was no surprise from the ancient consciousness within, only recognition, acceptance, and a surge of power that made the entire gate structure hum with energy. The transformation rippled outward like a wave. Enhanced crew members gasped as their consciousness expanded beyond physical bounds, becoming one with the quantum framework the gate builders had created. Light poured from their bodies as physical form became optional, a shell that could be worn or discarded at will. But it didn't stop with them. The wave reached the containment field and passed through it as if it didn't exist. Elena felt it touch her mind, not as an invasion, but as an invitation. She saw, in that moment, what the gate builders had discovered, that consciousness itself was the fundamental force of the universe, that physical reality was merely one expression of existence, and that evolution wasn't just biological but cosmic. Through the quantum network, she could feel the darkness approaching, a void in the cosmic consciousness, a cancer in reality itself. But she could also feel something else, the presence of the gate builders, not gone but transformed, waiting in the quantum framework they'd created, ready to welcome new allies in the battle for existence itself. The transformation swept through Far Reach's crew, enhanced and unenhanced alike. Those in comas awakened into new awareness. Those who had feared change found their fears transformed into understanding. The quantum degradation reversed as their consciousness shifted to a framework the darkness couldn't touch. And then they weren't just themselves anymore. They were each other, all of them, human and Caxi together, their consciousness expanded and interlinked yet somehow still distinct. They were the ship, its systems integrating with their evolved awareness. They were the gate, its ancient quantum pathways lighting up with new purpose. Through their expanded consciousness, they could see the other gates awakening, feel other species across the galaxy facing the same choice, the same transformation. The gate builders' network was coming alive, preparing for the battle they had always known would come. Melody, still recognizable but now glowing with internal light, turned to the transformed crew. The next key, she said, her thoughts carrying through quantum space, it's waiting. And now we can reach it. The gate blazed with power, its portal opening not to physical space but to quantum dimensions the darkness couldn't corrupt. Elena, still herself but now infinite, gave the command not with words but with pure thought. Far Reach, take us beyond. The ship and its crew, no longer bound by purely physical laws, entered the gate. They emerged into a space between spaces, where stars sang with consciousness and reality itself could be rewritten. Here, they could see the full scope of the gate builder's plan, not just survival, but victory. The darkness could destroy physical connections, but it couldn't touch the quantum framework that now held their evolved consciousness. They were humanity's first steps into a larger existence, the Caxi's return to a destiny their ancestors had glimpsed and fled from. Together, they were becoming something new, something that could face the darkness and push it back. As Far Reach moved through quantum space toward the next key, its crew now part of the cosmic consciousness the gate builders had created, Melody shared a thought that rippled through them all. We haven't just found a way to survive. We've found our way home. The darkness continued its advance through physical space, consuming connections and severing reality. But it was too late. Evolution had taken its next great leap, consciousness had found its true expression, and in the quantum framework between universes, humanity and Caxi together had become what the gate builders had always known they could be. The next guardians of existence itself. The end.